I got an email not long ago from a United States Marine. I was in the Navy. This man's in Marine Corps. I knew this man was no sissy. But he was not writing me as a tough guy. He was writing me as a distraught father. He said, my daughter was the top Christian student in her high school. She helped lead the youth group. She won several scholarships from Christian organizations to go off to college. So we sent her off to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She wanted to win the campus for Christ, and it needs to be one for Christ. He said about 6 weeks into the semester, her freshman year, I got a phone call from her. Her words devastated me. She said, Dad, I don't believe in God anymore. He said, don't believe in God anymore? What? He said, I got in my car. I drove 4 hours from Hickory, North Carolina, all the way to Chapel Hill. I sat down with her, and I got nowhere with her. What do you mean you don't believe in God anymore? Why not? And she said, well, you know, I've got this Ivy League professor who's teaching New Testament. And, of course, when you go to an Ivy League school, they always tell you the truth, don't they? And he says that we don't even know who wrote the Gospels and there are errors in the Bible, so, Dad, I'm an atheist now. He said, Frank, is there anything I can do about this? And as I was telling this story once in a church, some father yelled out and said, you know what I'd do about it? I'd bring her home. So, you know, that's not a bad tactic there. You go to a school for 6 weeks and you chuck everything you believed in for 18 years, maybe you're not mature enough to deal with what goes on a college campus. Maybe you ought to come home. But I said to him, Tom, have you ever gotten her any apologetics training? What's apologetics training? Giving her evidence that Christianity is true. He said, you know, I wanted to do that, but we just never got around to it. We wanted her to send her off to Summit, which is a Christian worldview camp. I teach at it. Several other apologists teach at it out in Colorado, but we never got around to it. Is there anything I can do now? I said, Tom, I don't know. You could ask her one question. This question I ask all unbelievers. In fact, I asked it of an atheist last night at UT Dallas. The question goes like this. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? I said, Tom, if she hesitates at all, it's not just here, it's also here. She might not want it to be true. And you know, when you go to college, there's a lot of factors that conspire against belief in God. One of them is you want to fit in with everybody, right? You don't want to be seen as the Bible thumper on campus. Secondly, you don't want to take on your atheistic college professors, and you're going to see in a minute how just atheistic college professors are. Thirdly, you're on your own for the first time. You don't want to live according to the rules of your parents anymore. You want to do your own thing. So there's a number of factors that conspire against belief in God. And if kids aren't equipped when they go to college or just get out of the home to know why Christianity is true, they're prime targets for atheism or agnosticism. It's been said before, you know, the easiest way to get picked off in a war is to not know you're in one. And a lot of us don't realize we are in a war for the minds and souls of our young people. And if we don't equip them, if we send them into battle unarmed, chances are they're going to get picked off. Now, let me tell you right now that this presentation is certainly rated PG-13. So if there are any real young people in here, you don't want to hear this, I'm warning you right now, we're not pulling any punches as to what's going on college campuses. Are you guys ready to go? All right. I want to start with Richard Dawkins. Here's his book, The God Delusion. You may have heard of Richard Dawkins, the most famous atheist in the world, probably right now. Here's what he says in The God Delusion. When one person suffers from a delusion, it is called insanity. When many people suffer from a delusion, it's called religion. If this book works as intended, religious readers who open it will be atheists when they put it down. He's kind of a evangelist for atheism, and many of his colleagues are. He's just one example. In fact, here's what we're going to try and do today. The first thing we're going to talk about are these intellectual predators on campus. Secondly, we're going to look at the impact on our kids. Finally, we're going to talk about at least one solution that we're trying to accomplish as a ministry, and by extension, Alan is as well. And then if I time this just right, we'll have absolutely no time for questions. That's my goal here. No. Hopefully we'll have time for questions. So let's start right here at point 1, intellectual predators on campus. Let me give you the big picture statistically. Now, I need to say this up front. I am not saying that all college professors are bad. Don't get me wrong. There are several good ones. We had a great one last night at UT Dallas. She's the kind of the leader of the Reasonable Faith chapter there, the faculty advisor. So there are many good college professors, but I'm just going to show you that statistically, compared to the general public, they're much more atheistic. In fact, Here's the reality of the college campus. 1 in 4 professors is an atheist or agnostic. More than half of the professors have unfavorable feelings toward evangelical Christians. In fact, in 2007, there was a survey done where they tried to figure out whether there was anti-Semitism among professors on college campuses. You know what? They found virtually no anti-Semitism. You know what they found? Anti-evangelicalism. 53% of college professors viewed evangelical students unfavorably. Compared to the evangelical students, Muslims were viewed unfavorably at 22%. Now, don't get me wrong. I wish professors would not view anybody unfavorably right out of the gate, but evangelical students by far viewed more unfavorably than just about any other, than certainly any other group. Now, a lot of this is the fault of the evangelical students. Why? Because they show up, and professors ask them, why do you believe what you believe? And they don't get very much more than Jesus lives in my heart. That's it. Also, 6% of Bible, or 6% of professors say the Bible is the Word of God. 51% of professors say the Bible is an ancient book of fables, legends, history, and moral precepts. In fact, college professors are 5 times more likely to be atheists than people in the general public. Okay, so you're dealing with a decidedly anti-Christian faculty here, generally speaking. Again, there are exceptions. I'm just telling you statistically, all right? Here's one of them. This is Daniel Dennett. He is also one of what's called the 4 horsemen of the new atheism. Richard Dawkins is one. Daniel Dennett is another. He's a professor at Tufts University. Christopher Hitchens was, obviously, before he died. And the other guy is Sam Harris, who's a philosopher from Stanford, who tries to teach people that there is no God as well. Here's what Dennett has said. He said, they will just see me as another liberal professor trying to cajole them out of some of their convictions, and they are dead right about that. That's what I am, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Richard Rorty, who died not long ago, but spoke really for, I think, many atheistic college professors, he put it this way. He said, we try to arrange things, professors do, so that students who enter as bigoted, homophobic, religious fundamentalists will leave college with views more like our own. He went on to say, so we are going right on to, or trying to discredit you in the eyes of your children, trying to strip your fundamentalist religious community of dignity, trying to make your views seem silly rather than discussable. In fact, you know the biggest problem is? The issues that are discussed aren't really the problem. The issues that are assumed settled are the problem. It's assumed settled on the college campus that you're an ignoramus if you believe the Bible's true. It's assumed settled that miracles don't occur. It's assumed settled that the Bible is filled with myths and fables. It's not even discussed. It's mocked. Stephen Weinberg, who teaches at UT Austin, right down the road here, won a Nobel Prize in physics. Put it this way. I personally feel that the teaching of modern science is corrosive of religious belief, and I'm all for that. If scientists can destroy the influence of religion on young people, then I think it may be the most important contribution that we can make. Wait, I thought a professor was supposed to impart truth to young people so then they could become good citizens. That's what education is supposed to be about. Not according to Weinberg. The number one thing a professor ought to do is talk young people out of religion. Now, actually, Weinberg has it exactly wrong. Science does not lead you away from a creator. It leads you directly toward a creator. But he tries to spin the evidence against Christianity rather than say it heads towards Christianity. And his goal is basically to talk young people out of the Christian faith. This man, Peter Singer, who teaches at Princeton, put it this way. When we reject belief in God, we must give up the idea that life on this planet has some preordained meaning. Life as a whole has no meaning. I wonder what he means by that. Life began in a chance combination of molecules. It evolved through chance mutations and natural selection. All this just happened. It did not happen for any overall purpose. This is called materialism. Everything you think, everything you feel is the result of a previous natural cause. You're not really thinking. You may think you are, but you're not. You're just reacting. You're no different than a Coke can fizzing. So you don't have free will. You don't really make moral choices. You're just a molecular machine. That's what he's saying right here. Now, if you think about this long enough, you'll realize that if we're all just molecular machines, so is he. So why should we believe anything he says? You see that? It's self-defeating to say that. How would he know atheism's true if he's just a molecular machine? He wouldn't. But he goes on to say this, and you're not going to, well, maybe you will believe this. Here's what he goes on to say. Human babies are not born self-aware or capable of grasping that they exist over time. They are not persons. Therefore, the life of a newborn is of less value than the life of a pig, a dog, or a chimpanzee. Therefore, parents have the right to kill their infants up to 28 days after birth. After birth. Hey, according to his philosophy, why 28 days? Why not 28 months or 28 years? Where does he come up with that arbitrary line? And if we're just molecules in motion, there are no morals. It's all just molecules jumping around here. We can kill anybody at any time. No one has any right. Now, actually, there were some decent people at Princeton that actually stopped funding Princeton when this guy was hired. But he's still there. Christopher Hitchens, whom I had the opportunity to debate a couple of times. You can see the debates on our websites for free, crossexamine.org. He's also one of the new atheists, or was before he tragically died. Very witty British journalist. He would debate anybody on Christianity. He wrote a book called God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. Here's what he said. He said, I think religion should be treated with ridicule, hatred, and contempt, and I claim that right. That's what he does, or did. He went on to say this. Charles Darwin was born in 1809 on the very same day as Abraham Lincoln, and there's no doubt as to which of them has proved to be the greater emancipator. What does he mean by that? Darwin is the greater emancipator. Why? Because Darwin gave us intellectual justification to emancipate ourselves from religion and all the moral precepts that come with it. In fact, when you ask somebody who's not a believer, why are you not a Christian? Or if you ask them if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And if they hesitate at all or they say no, I can almost guarantee you that most of the people who are not Christians, who claim to be atheists, are not atheists because of intellectual reasons. They're atheists because of this. You see, the elephant in the room is not evidence necessarily. The elephant in the room, in most cases, is morality and accountability. They don't want to be held accountable to any standard outside themselves. They don't want to have to do what they don't want to do. They don't want to bow their knee to a creator. That's why Hitchens called God a celestial North Korean dictator who looks down at every thought that you have and is ready to punish you and send you to hell if you don't obey him. Now, Hitchens was brilliant to say that because that's a caricature of God. Of course, it's not true. But if you don't take a hard look at Christianity or the Bible, you may think it's true. So he had moral objections to Christianity. He never really had complaints. I should say he never had arguments against Christianity. He had complaints about Christianity and about God. But yet kids who are out on their own for the first time and don't want to be held accountable to any of these moral restraints themselves look at Hitchens as a hero. They come to these debates and they just applaud everything he says, even though he's not making really any sense. He's not really making any good arguments. Bart Ehrman, how many have heard of this guy? Can I see your hands, please? Just a few of us. Bart Ehrman teaches at UNC Chapel Hill. And he says that we don't even know the New Testament text for the Bible. You can't trust it. Misquoting Jesus was his book he wrote in 2005. He also said there are a few things more dangerous than inbred religious certainty. That's dangerous if you think you know what's true about religion. Ehrman's books have caused many to fall away from the faith. Here's a dirty little secret about Ehrman's books. He doesn't even agree with them himself. In fact, the book is called Misquoting Jesus. It ought to be called Misquoting Ehrman. Why? Because the very same year, Bart Ehrman wrote a book that said we don't know if we have accurate copies of the New Testament. He wrote another book that same year with the top manuscript expert in the world, a man by the name of Bruce Metzger, who taught at Princeton University. In fact, Metzger mentored Ehrman because Ehrman went to Princeton years ago. And in 2005, he released Misquoting Jesus, where he said, we don't know what the New Testament said. And in 2005, he also co-wrote the book with Metzger and said, we do know what the New Testament said. We do know what the original New Testament said. Same year, same data, two different conclusions. You go, how can this be? Let me suggest to you what might be going on here. When Ehrman writes a book to the general public in 2005 called Misquoting Jesus, the general public doesn't know any better. If you write a book that doubts what the Bible says, you get a lot of press, don't you? Get you on the Colbert Report, get you on Jon Stewart, get you on a favorable review in the New York Times. As Cal Thomas says, every morning I read both the New York Times and the Bible just to see what both sides are doing. Get you a favorable review on NPR with Diane Reeves and all that. You sell a lot of books. If you write a book that says, the Bible's true, nobody pays any attention. But if you tried to say that to the academic world, particularly a guy like Dan Wallace, who teaches right here at Dallas Theological Seminary, one of the best New Testament scholars around, they'll say, that's nonsense. So when he writes to the academic world, he tells the truth. When he writes to the general public, he spins it. Causes many people to doubt. He's selling a lot of books too. Now, the last time I saw Bart Ehrman, he was driving a very expensive Mercedes. I'm just saying, all right? I don't know if this is his motivation or not. I just find it very odd that in the same year he'd release a book, or two different books with two different conclusions. But of course, the general public doesn't know this. Kids go, they sit under him. Who are they going to listen to, their pastor or their professor? You know, my dad is paying like $30,000 for me to go to this school, and I've never heard this stuff from my pastor. Maybe this professor's telling the truth. And it would be convenient if he was telling the truth, because then I don't have to live according to the moral constraints of God. This lady right here, her name is Miriam Cook. She's a Muslim. You say, well, she doesn't look like a Muslim, but she thinks like a Muslim here. In fact, she teaches at Duke. Here's what she's an Islamic feminist, actually. Is that an oxymoron or what? Can you? Here's what she says. Islamic feminists are declaring that, yes, Islam is the ideal just society. Islamic feminists confront any who threaten their Islamic or local community, whether they be organizations or individual men or Christian, Jewish, or secular women. Islam is the ideal just society? Especially for women? Hello, McFly. What planet is she on? By the way, she teaches at Duke. Does anyone know who founded Duke? It wasn't a Blue Devil. The Methodists founded Duke. John Wesley's denomination. And yet they have a Muslim on the faculty there. James Tabor teaches at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I happen to live in Charlotte, so I'm familiar with this guy. And let me give you a little background on Tabor. James Tabor is the chairman of the religious studies at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. His book challenges many of the beliefs that Christians hold dear, maintaining that Jesus is neither the son of God nor the son of Joseph, but most likely the child of a Roman soldier named Pantera. What? Where does he get this stuff from? Does he have any evidence for this? No. Do you know what he does? He has in his book, The Jesus Dynasty, he says, since we know that miracles don't occur, then Jesus must have been conceived just like any other baby, and it's probably a Roman soldier that did this. How do we know miracles don't occur? He's just assuming they don't. If they do occur, he's totally closed himself off from the possibility of discovering that, hasn't he? And you'll see why in a few minutes we think miracles do occur and have occurred. The bottom line to all this is that education is thus the most powerful ally of humanism, and every American public school is a school of humanism. What can the theistic Sunday schools, meeting for an hour once a week and teaching only a fraction of the children, do to stem the tide of a 5-day program of humanistic teaching? Not much. You want to know why our country is going the way it is? You know whose fault it is? We ought to all go home and look in the mirror. It's our fault. Church hasn't been the church in the past 100 years. The church got out of society 100 years ago. And let's not separate from that. Let's not get involved in politics. Let's not get involved in education. Let's not get involved in law. Or if we get involved in education, let's just create our own Christian schools. Let's not influence these other schools. Let's just do our own thing. Let's separate. Let's take all the godly people out of society. Gee, then we wonder, why is the society going godless? Because we removed our influence. That's why. We're the problem. Liberals are just doing what they find natural. We're the ones that aren't doing anything about it. Let me give you some Bible courses that are actually taught. At Harvard, you can take feminist biblical interpretation and emancipatory biblical criticism. These are all Bible courses that have been taught within the past 10 years at these schools. You want to emancipate yourself from the Bible, go to Harvard. Georgetown, you can take womanist theology and womanist spirituality. Gee, I didn't know there were those things. Georgetown, they exist. At University of Pennsylvania, you can take feminist critique of Christianity. Last time I checked, they did not have a course called feminist critique of Islam. Gee, I wonder why. Also, there's a lot of homosexual indoctrination. At University of Michigan, you could How to Be Gay, Male Homosexuality and Initiation. Gee, I thought you were born that way. Where are they coming up with this stuff? You know, you have to be indoctrinated in it, apparently. At UCLA, you can take Queering American History, Chicana lesbian literature, and public speaking on lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues. There's no course that says speaking out on Christian issues. That would be too politically incorrect, wouldn't it? At Wesleyan University, you can take Queering the American State, Politics, and Sex after 1968. Makes a nice substitute for Shakespeare. And right down the road here, you're not going to believe this, but this is UT Austin. You can take The Family, which is indoctrination into the idea that homosexual parenting is just as good as a mom and a dad. Right down the road. There's a lot of totalitarianism going on. This is Jennifer Keaton, who was expelled from Augusta State University counseling program for biblical natural law views. She refused to submit to a homosexual remedial plan. She said, look, if I become a counselor, I can't counsel people and affirm them in homosexual behavior. I'll refer them to another client, but I can't do it myself. They kicked her out of the program. Said, sorry, you don't have the freedom to deny that. You must do that. Jennifer Keaton is similar to this lady, Julia Ward, who was expelled from Eastern Michigan University counseling program. Why? Because, again, she wouldn't affirm clients' homosexual behavior, but would instead refer such clients to other counselors. Now, Keaton lost her case. Julia Ward won her case. The Alliance for Defending Freedom used to be known as the ADF. They're great people. They go out there. There's all these Christian attorneys, and they argue these cases in court. They won a $75,000 case in her favor. But the lady previous lost her case. You think that's bad? It gets worse. There's a show called The Sex Workers Show where transvestites, strippers, homosexuals, prostitutes mock America and traditional values. This has been shown and financed by Duke, Harvard, the College of William and Mary, the University of Michigan, Wesleyan University, and the University of California at Davis. They come in, paid for by student fees. In other words, the university takes these student fees and pays these people to come in and do this. And not many people say a word about it. Although actually at the College of William and Mary, this happened, I think, in 2008. And that, along with the fact that the president at William and Mary wanted to take the cross off the chapel because it would offend too many people, enough of the alumni said, that's it. If you don't get rid of this president, we're not giving you another dime. By the way, if you give to colleges, consider who you're giving to and why you're giving money there. I mean, do you love your basketball tickets more than you love your children? If that's the case, you may want to rethink that. A lot of alumni, as you know, get basketball tickets and football tickets because they give a lot of money. But they don't know that their money is going to fund stuff like this. It gets worse. At Vanderbilt, you can take pornography and prostitution in history. At UCLA, you can take pornography and evolution. At Bates College, you can take doing it, getting it, seeing it, reading it, and you know what it is. At Pasadena City College, this was just in the news last month, you can take navigating pornography. And I don't even believe this last one, but it's true. At Cornell, you can take The Sexual Child, which advocates pedophilia, which is a crime, but you can take the class. And I don't know if you saw this, but just in California, just this past week, some Democratic senator in the state of California, or congressperson, put forth a bill. You may have heard this, that they put forth a bill recently that said nobody can counsel a young person, anybody under 18, counsel them not to engage in homosexuality. So if someone has homosexual attractions and they're under 18, there's a law being put in place in California that it's illegal for counselors to try and talk them out of that, to try and counsel them out of that. Well, this other lady brought forth this bill that says all sexual orientations are protected by this, which means that if you're a young person and you have feelings for children, they can't talk you out of it in a counseling session. In other words, pedophilia is a sexual orientation. You see that? Do you see where this is going? This is the slippery slope straight to hell. That now we're going to protect pedophiles? See this lady, Alice Kuznar? For many years she taught at UNC Chapel Hill. That's the picture from the Chapel Hill website. You know why she's there with dogs? Yes. Oh, yes, unfortunately. She's an advocate of bestiality. She says this: those who have an ardor for dogs know that their passion is unavailable and inaccessible elsewhere. Being independent of gender and sexuality, this love is liberating. You think I'm making this up, don't you? Now, by the way, who's paying for this? You are. Do you realize that most of the schools I put up here, with a few exceptions, are all public schools? They're all paid for with tax dollars that you pay. UT Austin, if you're in North Carolina, Chapel Hill. If you're in California, UCLA. You're in Michigan, University of Michigan. How many people knew about this? Did you guys know anything about this? I didn't know about it either until I started doing research. Dinesh D'Souza, who wrote a book called What's So Great About Christianity, a response to the New Atheists, said this: children spend the majority of their waking hours in school. Parents invest a good portion of their life savings in college education and trust their offspring to people who are supposed to educate them. Isn't it wonderful that educators have figured out a way to make parents the instruments of their own undoing? Isn't it brilliant that they persuaded Christian moms and dads to finance the destruction of their own beliefs and values? Who said atheists aren't clever? I apologize for this cheery presentation. Sometimes we need the truth, right? This is what is going on, and we're paying for it. So, what's the impact on our kids and society? Here's what Lincoln said many years ago: the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of the government in the next. You see, our education system turns out little leftists. And I don't just mean political leftists, I mean theological leftists. And we just finance it ourselves. If I told you the names of these people, I've changed the names, you would know who they are. So these are people I know and you know. John, a pastor's daughter, became an agnostic at UNC Chapel Hill. Prominent pastor. She became an agnostic in the orientation program. Steve, son of a famous Christian, renounced biblical morality at Elon. He just said, the homosexuality, the prohibitions against homosexuality must be wrong, so I'm giving up the Bible. You know why he thought that? Because nobody has ever given a cogent defense against homosexual behavior, not homosexual attractions. There's a difference between attractions and actions. No pastor ever talked about the reason homosexual actions are a problem. They just, we don't want to offend anybody. John, a high school worker for Campus Crusade, became an atheist after reading this book. In fact, I got a few years back an email from the father who said, my son just read this book. He used to work for Campus Crusade. Now he's an atheist. So I sent him, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I don't know what happened, but if you know anything about philosophy, good rational thinking, and apologetics, this book, I'm telling you, is a joke In fact, Alvin Plantinga, who teaches at Notre Dame, who's a Christian, said to call the God delusion sophomoric would be a insult to sophomores. That's how bad this book is. But if you don't know anything about philosophy or you don't know anything about apologetics or evidence for the faith, you might think he's making sense. He's not making sense. Dawkins is a great writer. That's why it sounds like he's making sense. But there are holes throughout this book in his logic. Now, unless our young people are grounded in the truth and they know why it's the truth, most of them are going to reject God's word. They're going to reject God's purpose. What is the purpose of life? Well, I guess it's just to go out there and have fun and have sex and make money and live it up. And certainly they're going to reject God's morality. In fact, I want to show you a very short video. It contains students who are supposedly the top Christian kids in the country. And this video goes back almost 10 years now. In fact, a friend of mine worked with Focus on the Family, and I'll tell you where this is from. He deals with an organization that tries to fight pornography, and he said to James Dobson once, who was at the time the leader of Focus on the Family, he said, pornography and sex is rampant in our high schools. And, of course, Dobson said, I agree with you, but I don't think that's the case in Christian schools. And my friend Rick Schatz said, Jim, I hate to tell you this, it's going on in Christian schools too. He said, oh, come on, it isn't. He said, I'm telling you, it is. And Jim said, look, I'll prove to you it's not. Why don't you come and interview our young people who come to the Focus Family Academy every year? I mean, they get 2,000, at least they did at the time, they get 2,000 applications for kids to come to this Christian worldview camp and at Focus on the Family and learn Christian worldview and all that. And they only take about 60 kids. So these are supposed to be the cream of the crop Christian kids, right? So he said, Rick, why don't you bring your cameras in here and interview these kids and see what they say. See if your thesis is right. Now you're going to see some boys in the beginning talking about hooking up. And then you'll see some girls talking about it. These are supposedly the top Christian kids in the country according to Focus on the Family. Here we go.
And I've seen it in times where it happens in less than a month and kids just start hooking up.
You'd meet a guy, he was cute, you had a good time together. You'd go out, he'd buy you dinner, and he'd treat you so nice, and that was the thing you would do. You would go home or wherever, and, you would pay him back. You would go down on him or, vice versa. And I just, it wasn't like this big, moral issue to me.
If a guy asked you to give him a blowjob, then be like, yeah, sure, I want to be loved, I want to feel like I'm appreciated. Maybe if I do this, then he will love me.
Like teenagers, we just want to be older. And so when you're a virgin, you're still a little kid. It's still like you're young. And we just want to keep getting to that stage where we're older than we are.
When Rick Schatz showed that video to James Dobson, he had the same look on his face that you have on your face right now. I don't believe what I just saw. It's everywhere. And we don't even know it or maybe care to find out about it. So, the question is, what can we do about it? There is no one silver bullet, I hate to tell you. There's no one thing that's going to cure this whole problem, quite obviously. But one of the things that we need to start doing is exactly what Jesus told us to do, which is what? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Christians don't get brownie points for being stupid. We're supposed to know what we believe and why we believe it. Everything that you do goes through your mind. Every thought that you have, every action you take is a product of how you think. The most important thing you can do, other than teaching your kids to love God, is to develop the mind of your young person. And that's how you love God. Develop the person's mind. Everything you do goes through your mind. Nothing goes to the heart without first going through the head. And if your head is not developed, it can get to the heart quickly and you can do something that can dramatically hurt you, quite obviously. So, these books right here are the books that have been popular on campus for the past 5 or 10 years. The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. God is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens, Misquoting Jesus by Bart Ehrman. I mentioned them all. And basically, these books teach four things. Postmodernism or relativism. There is no truth. You got your truth. I got my truth. You can do whatever you want. Atheism and materialism. There is no God. Atheism's true. We're just molecular machines. Anti-supernaturalism. Miracles don't occur. So quite obviously you believe in the Bible. You're wrong. And of course, biblical criticism. That this book has errors in it anyway. So even if miracles could occur, it's wrong. Don't even believe in it. Now, what we are trying to do through our ministry, Alan's trying to do it through his ministry as well, is to give an answer to each one of these isms. Because each one of these things that are up here right now is false. And what we try and do is answer these isms with four questions. In fact, there are only four questions you need to answer in the affirmative to show that Christianity is true. Just four. If you answer yes to these four questions, you can show beyond any reasonable doubt that Christianity is true. What are the four questions? Here are the four questions. Now that's some pretty groovy music, isn't it? Come on, that's some cheery music for this presentation, isn't it? Actually, that's from our TV show, which is on every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. and midnight here in the Central Time Zone. And tonight, it's on at 9 p.m. if you have DirecTV. How many people have DirecTV? Can I see your hands, please? DirecTV. Okay, 6 of us. Why not the rest of us? Come on, friends, don't let friends watch cable. If you want to get, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, you got to get DirecTV. Actually, that's not true. You can go home tonight, go to our website, crossexamine.org, click on TV show, and you can watch it live on the internet. It's streamed. I think we're talking the first session of I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist tonight. So if you want to get some more information on that, do that, or go to our website and get the DVDs. We're also on radio every Saturday morning at 9 a.m., right here on 90.5 in the Dallas area. But that's podcasted. You can listen to that anytime. This morning we had a program with a great philosopher by the name of Edward Feser, F-E-S-E-R. He wrote a book called The Last Superstition, which is a great attack on the new atheists and gives very good evidence that, of course, theism, Christianity is true. You may want to listen to that podcast. Again, you can go to iTunes and just type in Cross-Examined. You'll find it. Now, why are these the four questions? Truth, God, miracles, and the New Testament. Because if there is no truth, then quite obviously the Bible can't be true, right? I mean, if relativism is true, then this book isn't, okay? But of course, if there is no truth, then any book written by an atheist can't be true either, like the God delusion, right? We just talked about this for a few hours today over at Watermark Church, going through all this evidence. Obviously, I don't have time to do that here, but let me give you one quick idea on people who say there is no truth. If somebody says there is no truth to you, you should ask them a question. What should the question be? Is that true? Is it true that there is no truth? Because if it's true that there is no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true. This is known as a self-defeating statement. It's like saying I can't speak a word in English, right? It defeats itself. It can't be true. So relativism and postmodernism are false. Why? Because they violate the most basic law of thought, the law of non-contradiction. Of course there's truth out there. If you try and claim there isn't, you're making a truth claim which defeats itself. Okay? The second question, does God exist? In our book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, we give three major arguments for the existence of God. Let me just talk about one of them. The universe, space, matter, and time exploded into being out of nothing. This is not even controversial among atheists. They try and come up with another cause for this other than God, but in the end, all of their objections or all of their suggestions as to how the universe came into existence fail. If space, time, and matter had a beginning out of nothing, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, intelligent, and powerful. Now, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, intelligent, personal, and powerful cause, who do you think of? That's what we mean by God. The universe exploded into being out of no space, no matter, no time, out of literally nothing. What is nothing? Aristotle had a good definition of nothing. He said nothing is what rocks dream about. Okay? That's nothing. And the universe came from that. There's other arguments as well. Number 3, are miracles possible? Obviously, if miracles are not possible, the Bible can't be true. And a lot of people have trouble with miracles. They just can't believe in miracles because they haven't seen any, whatever. What's the greatest miracle in the Bible? People always say, no, the virgin birth's not it. That's easy. Resurrection, people don't normally say, because it's a big one, but it's easy compared to the greatest miracle. What's the greatest miracle in the Bible? Yeah, the greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If that verse is true, every other verse is at least possible, right? Well, we now have good scientific evidence and even philosophical evidence that the first verse is indeed true, that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If God can create the heavens and the earth out of nothing, can he do whatever he wants? It's not logically impossible inside the heavens and the earth? Of course. If he can create the heavens and the earth, can he walk on water? Of course. Can he raise Jesus from the dead? Of course. Can he keep Jonah alive in a fish for 3 days or kill him and resurrect him later? Of course. This is easy for a God who can create the universe out of nothing. Now, some of you are going, you just said something that I don't know if it's true. You said God can do whatever he wants. It's not logically impossible. I thought God could do anything. No, there's even some things God can't do. Like what? He can't do logically impossible things. Like he can't create a square circle. Right? There's no such thing. He can't create a one-ended stick. No such thing. He can't create a married bachelor. No such thing. He can't create an honest politician. Okay? There's some things even too hard for God. Now, question number 4, is the New Testament true? The New Testament doesn't have a prayer. If truth doesn't exist, God doesn't exist, or miracles are not possible. However, if truth exists, God exists, and miracles are possible, then we can see if any other miracles have occurred in the 27 handwritten Greek manuscripts we now call the New Testament. There's a chapter in the book called The Top 10 Reasons We Know the New Testament Writers Told the Truth. I don't have time to get into any of it right now, but we can be sure that the New Testament writers are telling the truth. In fact, there's very good evidence they're telling the truth, and they paid with their lives to say it was true when they could have saved themselves by saying otherwise. Now, some of you are looking at that going, what about the Old Testament? Believe the Old Testament's true? Well, if the New Testament's reliable, you get the Old Testament thrown in. Why? Who's in the New Testament that can authenticate the Old? Jesus. If Jesus really is God, as the New Testament documents claim he is, then whatever God teaches is true. Jesus taught the entire Old Testament is the Word of God. So if the New Testament's reliable, you get the Old Testament thrown in. All right? Now, does this process that we go through in trying to show young people that the atheists are wrong, does this bear any fruit? Well, yes, it does. Let me show you.
I grew up in a Christian home, Christian family, and then it wasn't until I moved away and went to college that I stopped going to church, just because I didn't really want to get up early on a Sunday morning. It was easier to sleep in, just have fun and hang out with friends. I stopped hanging around others who believed and who went to church, and eventually I considered myself more of an atheist or agnostic. I started questioning whether I believed, what I believed, whether there was a God. So a lot of the times when I asked my family and friends why they believed in God and why they were Christians, they would say stuff like, the Bible says so, or they would just tell me to look around and look at the plants and the animals, and that it's obvious that it had to be created by God. But I don't think those arguments work for everybody, especially those who don't believe in Christianity already aren't going to believe that the Bible means anything. And I had known since I grew up going to church that as a Christian you're supposed to defend your faith and try and talk to other people about it and convince them. But I realized that the friends and family I had didn't really seem to know why they were Christian, except that they had been raised that way. And so I didn't think that was a very good reason for why I should be Christian, because if I had been raised something else, then I would just be something else. So when I was at school, I noticed that there were a lot of people who said they were Christian, but I would have never guessed it if they hadn't told me. So I met another guy at school named Garrett. I could tell that he had done research on what he believes and also why he believes. So I could ask him a lot of questions, and I talked to him about a lot of things that I doubted. He had well thought out responses for why he believed, and he had heard a lot of the objections that I brought up before and wasn't caught off guard. He had good responses. He knew how to answer me. So that got me thinking a lot more about Christianity again. And then he invited me to a conference about whether God exists or not. The speaker was Frank Turek, and so I decided I would go check it out, and I felt like he did a very good job of presenting some clear arguments and scientific reasons to why there's a God. And he wrote a book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. It introduced me to some topics that I hadn't really looked at before. It made a lot of sense to me, and I didn't feel like, after reading it, I didn't feel like science and Christianity were enemies or opposites. One of the points that struck me as interesting was, how could something come from nothing if the universe hasn't been around forever? That got me thinking, why did it start at that point? You know, what caused it to start? I kind of thought, you know, what if there's a God that could have done that? To me, that seemed like an idea that made sense. I started talking to Garrett again and asking him about the questions that I'd had and the ideas that I had. He could tell that I was becoming closer to believing in God, and so he invited me to go to church with them. After looking into why I believe what I believe, church had a lot more meaning, and it was a lot more meaningful to go to church because it was something that I believed in, not just something that my family or my parents believed in and wanted me to do with them. So Garrett invited me to check out the Reasonable Faith group on campus, which is a group where atheists and theists can come and talk about important issues about whether or not there's a God, and they focus on scientific reasons and logical and intelligent reasons for believing in God, and it's open for discussion. So there are people there that don't believe in God, and they bring up good questions a lot. And going to that group definitely helped solidify what I believed, and it gave me strong arguments for believing in God and for what I believe.
Now, what we do is we just do a catalyst event. We go to the college campus like we were there last night and do the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist presentation. But then what Alan does and others on campus do is they stay on campus and try and help kids learn more and get in a group. In fact, that's how Mitch ultimately became a Christian. It wasn't just because of the event we did. It was because Alan and others on campus stayed with him and is now a Christian. In fact, he was at the event last night. But you know what's even more important than that? To get this in the church now. You don't want to have to go on a search and rescue mission after your kid goes off to college. You want to equip them before they go to college. This ought to be taught in every church, everywhere. And it's not just my opinion, this is a command. Jesus said this. Peter said, always be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have. Paul said, demolish arguments and take every thought captive to Christ. We wonder why our kids walk away because we don't prepare them. Now, we do have some resources in the back, the books available back there, as well as a 10-part or 12-part DVD set that goes through the 4 questions and some other information as well. It's back there on the book table. There's a curriculum that you can get at our website as well. And there's our website, crossexamine.org. And by the way, all the proceeds from the sale of the books and the DVDs and the curriculum will go to feed needy children. Mine, just so you know. Okay. Now, for instant answers, here are some places you can go. You got to get it started here at the church, but you can go to our website. You can go to reasonablefaith.org. That's the website for William Lane Craig, who's another Christian apologist and with whom Alan is associated. You can go to str.org. That's standtoreason.org. By the way, if you don't get all these down, just go to our website, crossexamine.org. Click on links. They're all there, okay? You can go to risenjesus.com. That's Michael Icona, who's a Christian scholar on the resurrection. You can go to reasons.org if you're very scientifically oriented. That's the website for you, Ross. You can go to GaryHabermas.com. Everybody loves Gary Habermas. He teaches at Liberty University. He's an expert, probably the world-renowned expert on the resurrection. You can go to Apologetics315.com. It's a clearinghouse for all sorts of apologetic information. It's a great website to go to. So you have no excuse now. You've got places you can go. And with that, we've got just a few minutes for questions.